What's up? Welcome to another edition of Gunner Street Beats. I'm on my way to church alone because my wife is sick. She got some kind of flu or bug or cold. She's been sick for 4 or 5 days. Getting better now, but she doesn't want to be the contagious person who infects the entire church. I might be infectious. Hopefully I'm not a carrier. Hopefully I don't get it. But it's been raining for 3 days straight. Everything's flooded out. It's crazy. The rivers are unfishable right now. They're too blown up. But the funny story is, I went to I went to New York last year for an interview, and when I came back the next day, I had church. I was around millions of people essentially in New York City. And when I came back, I had church the next day, and the following week, like half the church was out, and everybody was sick with COVID. And I think I caught COVID too. Well, I was sick. Yeah, it was COVID. I'm sure it was. I didn't get tested, but I was like, I had like a runny respiratory. It was mostly just a runny and stuffed nose for a month. Just kept blowing my nose for a month. Not a lot of fun. But anyway, since on my way to church, I figured I would share my my faith journey, because I've shared it before, but there are details that I forgot or left out. But I'm going to tell it again since I'm on my way to church. It's apropos. And I think the church, so sadly, my pastor, his father-in-law died a couple days ago, so I don't think he's going to be there. So he's like, his right hand, the church, I almost hit a sparrow. And the church elder, Mike, is an awesome dude, man. He's like my surrogate father. Awesome guy. I love him. Funny, because in the beginning, I didn't really like him. Well, there's a reason for that. But after getting to know him, I love the dude. Him and his wife are like my surrogate parents, man. They're so cool. And they love me. So he asked me, he's like, I want you to be there because we're going to be doing like a more of a sit-down sharing of testimonies and Bible study than like a service. And I'd really like you to be there. And so, I'm always happy to share my testimony and maybe inspire some people. So cool. I'm going to tell you my story. So, I was born and raised Catholic, baptized when I was, this is a good story, so listen. Like, if you're like, I don't want to hear this guy's faith story, trust me, it's a good story, and it's a crazy one, and you'll enjoy it. But, being born half Sicilian, but I was raised in a Sicilian home. My parents divorced when I was 4. Don't have much memories before that. I know I was baptized as a Catholic, and it's funny because when I was at the Italian festival, some of my cousins came over to me and uncles, and they're like, "Yeah, I was at your baptism," and I'm like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." And one of my cousins, Atoko, told me that my grandmother was at his daughter's baptism, who was born while I was in prison, and they named his daughter after my grandmother and mother. They're both named Grace. Oh, that was pretty cool, man. And I got to meet her. He called her over and said, "Hey, I want you to meet your cousin, Alan. This is your cousin, and you're named after his mother and grandmother. His grandmother was at your baptism." My mom had already died. That was pretty cool. Then he starts bringing up stories like, "Man, I remember the time you and your Uncle Pete did this and did that and did this," and half of them, I'm like, I don't even remember, man. Just bad behavior stuff, But he was happy for me. He's like, "Man, you're doing good, man. Congratulations. Never forget you're a Toko." That's what he said. Because I said, I know technically I'm not a Toko. He says, "No, you're a Toko. You'll always be a Toko. Don't ever say that." Exact words. Don't ever say that. You're family. You're one of us. And that's how they treated me back in the day. They always, even though my last name was Lindblom, they all treated me like family. All my cousins and stuff. A lot of my cousins who are thug life, gangster wannabes and whatever, they gave me extra love. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like the only gangster around. Compared to them, they might have been doing some, white collar rackets and gambling books and loan sharking, but I carried a gun, which is and did great gangster stuff all the time, and they knew it, so they were just like, my cousin Al's monster. Anyways, so I ended up getting busted for steroids, selling steroids when I was 17. Fought it for about a year and a half, got a good lawyer. But because I had already previously had 7 or 8 felonies, the prosecution was pushing for prison. And I kept postponing, trying to get the lawyer to figure out a way to get me out of this. And then my uncle told my grandfather this, and then my uncle said, Grandpa's going to go sit down with the judge. And I said, well, what's he going to do? He said, well, he's going to handle it. That's all he said. I said, what's he going to do? He said, what do you think? And then my uncle would later say, Grandpa gave the judge 10 G's. The judge's name was Judge Coretti. He went by Judge Corrette, but his real name was Coretti. And he's notoriously connected to the mafia. I learned this later on. I didn't even know it at the time. I didn't know his last name was Coretti. His real last name was Coretti, that he changed it to make it sound more American. None of that. Yeah, maybe I did. Maybe my Uncle Sal told me that. But I didn't know him like my grandpa knew him. But maybe my grandpa did know him. Maybe my grandpa called his cousin Jack Toko and said, listen, I got a problem. Can you make the introduction and help me make this go away? He probably did. Jack Toko probably reached out to the judge, said, I got a cousin, Pete. His grandson's in trouble. He needs your help. So what they did is they changed the venue. They got me switched from that judge that I was supposed to be under to him. And then it worked out a plea agreement where I get 6 months county time. Or work release. 6 months work release. But I blew it on the work release, man. Two things. The first thing I did is try to doctor up my schedule so I could get laid. Before I went to prison or jail at the time, I was living with my two cousins, Dino and Joe, on a house in Detroit on 7 Mile. My address was 19210. I remember it because the show 90210 was a big deal. And ours was 19210. It was funny. 3 bachelors, all bodybuilding meatheads, Jersey Shore. Well, they're older than me, like 2-3 years older than me. They're super handsome. We had a million girls coming and going. It was one of those things. Not a good environment. Then another one of our cousins at the time, this is why I got introduced to opiates. He introduced us to something called Nubane. Nubane was a synthetic morphine. I'm a guy on a motorcycle and it's raining. I feel bad. Synthetic morphine, and I call it funky juice. The first time I gave it, I'm at my cousin's house selling him a bag of weed, right? Which is funny. I was just telling this story about him. He's a Toko too, and he'd call me every day for a bag of weed. I lived in St. Clair Shores. He was in Grosse Pointe. He was kind of a famous dude too. I won't say his name because he's around. He doesn't appreciate it. He may be involved, but he said, hey, bring me a bag. And I finally was like, man, why don't you just buy an ounce or a quarter pound or something? Then I have to come over every day. I didn't know if he had trouble getting the money up every day for a whole quarter pound or whatever. But I did enjoy him. I enjoyed hanging around the guy. He was funny and we got along good. He's a big bodybuilder. Lived in LA for a while. Dated Alyssa Milano, where he went on a date or two with her. And so one day, because steroids, we were selling steroids and doing it. I really wasn't doing any at the time. I ended up doing some. Actually, I did before a bodybuilding show. I did Winstrol V for like 6 weeks in something called Prima Ball. And before a bodybuilding show, it helps you get tight and ripped and leaned up. So I did that. But before that, I hadn't done nothing. Anyways, so steroids were a normal thing for us. And we, injected them or whatever. And before I go to Steve's house one day, he says, I'm going to give you something, man. I want you to save it for your workout and do it before your workout. And he gives me like an insulin syringe with like 2 milliliters. There's 2 little milliliters in it. He says, pop it in your shoulder and go before you work out. I'm like, what is it? He said, oh, give you a great workout. All right, cool. So I did it and it was freaking awesome, right? I didn't know what it was. I mean, it was like awesome. So I felt it right away. And so the next day or two, I go back over there, selling a bag of weed. I'm like, yo, you got any more of that funky juice? He's like, funky juice? I'm like, that stuff you gave me, He's like, yeah. So he gave me more. He gave me another one with like enough for like 2 doses. And then I was bugging him for it all the time. It was hard to get, expensive, so I didn't get a lot of it. But he ended up ordering some for us from California. He was friends with the, remember the American Gladiator show? Chick named Zap. Her husband was his boy. And she was, I guess, strung out on this Nubane stuff too, which is synthetic morphine. And so I remember the day before I go to jail, not prison, a crazy story, actually. Let's start there. And then I'm going to get into my faith journey. But basically, we were living together in this house in 7 Mile, right? Girls coming and going all the time. But I knew I'm going to jail for the next 6 months, even though it's work release. I'm going to be in jail. So I called my girlfriend over because, I want a little, and she can only stay out till midnight at the time. She's like 20. No, she's 19. Possibly 18. She's 6 months younger than me, so And so I have some alone time with her. Then my cousin comes over and he says, I got some heroin. And I'm like, now at the time, we were all kind of half strung out on this New Bane stuff. We're like stealing it from each other because we all had a little bottle because it came out of a bottle like a drug, And he says heroin basically is the same thing. And I'm like, what? Because I was like, heroin? Hell no, man. I heard nothing good about heroin. He's like, yeah, well, heroin's the same thing as this New Bane. It's just a little stronger. So I figured, I'll do a little. This is the first time I ever did heroin. And he cooked it up with a spoon, sucked it up, and I shot it, and I was like, whoa. Then I ended up passing out in the bed, naked, because my girlfriend left about midnight. Then these girls come over, and this girl who I had my eyes on for a while, she was like 22, 3, older than me. Beautiful girl. She was a model for the auto show, right? It's beautiful. Knockout. And I've been flirting with her, whatever. And my boys are like, she likes you, you're going to be able to tap that. So I'm like, whatever. So she comes over, but I'm sleeping in the basement. I got my room in the basement. And her and her friends come over and they're partying upstairs, hanging out, drinking, whatever. She sneaks in the basement and I'm naked on the bed, laying face down. And she's on a phone. She's on her cordless phone talking to somebody. And she's going, and she gets right up by me and she's like right next to me. She's like, I'm in this bedroom right now. And I freak out, snap awake from this heroin coma, and I reacted in this, I grabbed her by the throat and threw her against the wall so hard that it broke her arm. She slammed against the wall and she's like, ah. And before I even let go, I'm like, oh no. And I said, I'm sorry, you freaked me out, you scared me, whatever. I didn't know if somebody was sneaking in my room to get me, I just reacted. That's my fight or flight reaction, And I grabbed her and threw her. And she's like, you mother effing asshole, blah, 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 blah. She's cursing me out in her arm. She's going to go in the hospital with a broken arm. That's all I remember. Then the next day, I went to jail and checked myself in the jail. I don't know, 2-3 weeks later, I'm like missing. So I doctor up my schedule because they only called, I was testing it out. They only call your work kind of arbitrarily, randomly. They don't call every time you go to work to see if you're there. If you work 5 days a week, they might call twice. So I thought to myself, I'm going to roll the dice, because I hadn't called. I'm going to roll the dice and, I hope this thing's recording. I'm going to roll the dice and see if I can get away with it. So I go there, I go, like, the day I'm supposed to go to work, I don't. I meet my girl back at our house, in my bedroom, do what the kids do. Go back to the jail, and they're like, yo, you weren't at work. We called, da-da-da. So I'm totally busted. I'm like, yeah, I went in there, and they said I didn't have to work. I got the schedule messed up. I was working at GNC. You know what GNC, the nutritional place? Which is a whole nother crazy story. Like, I was letting my cousins basically, too, like, I'm not going to say their names, they would come in there and steal. And they got hip to it. I'd let them steal protein powders, amino acids, and da-da. Plus I was stealing money out of the till. Like, people would pay cash. And I'd give them the receipt, then void the receipt, and give them the stuff, and then keep the cash. And I kept the drawer balanced perfectly. So I was stealing like $100 a day from the place, which is, a scumbag thing to do, but that's the type of mindset I was on at the time. So they bust me, and they're like, yo, that's your first warning, because I kind of played it like I didn't know any better. They're like, it could happen. Why didn't you come back? I'm like, I don't know, I had the day out, so I went and had lunch with my girlfriend. I think I came back, I don't know, I can't remember, but I came back, they busted me. So that's your first warning. You only get usually one. They were cool, let me stay in the program. And then the next time was, I was sitting at the it's jail. It's an 8-man cube, bars. The officer's desk is just down the hall. There's 6 8-man cubes in the work release program. It's jail. It's nothing different except you get to leave to go to work. So, and that's how I worked it out with the judge and the lawyer. It was like, I'll do the work release so I can still get out and get laid and all these things. Work. So I sit down for my tray, and there's this big black dude, kind of light-skinned dude. He had all these spots on his head. They were like age spots looking, but they were birthmarks all over his head. He sounded a big cocky dude. I think he'd done prison time. And I was just a pretty little white kid, I was only 19-year-old. I was ripped up, bodybuilding wise, but I wasn't no big dude. So he'd have been in there kind of bullying other guys, talking tough, barking at people. I just kind of ignored him. I don't give a crap what he does. I just sit in there and read a book. That's all I would do is read and then go to work. And he sits down across the table from me and says, "Let me get your cookie, dog," or whatever. I'm like, "No, man, I'm eating my cookie." He said, "Let me get your cookie, dog." I looked him in the eye. I said, "Bro, I'm eating my cookie. Back up off me." Reached over, grabs the cookie. I snap. I jump over the table, wham, jaw shot him, knock him out of his chair, get on top of him, start mollywop him, right? Cops hear the chaos because they're only one cell down in the hallway at the officer station. They hear the struggling and fighting. They come in there, busting there, and that's it. They take me up to the tower, which is the main jail. Anyone who's ever been to Macomb County Jail, they're familiar with the tower. The work release at the time was like an annex connected to it. So now I'm up in the tower. I'm kicked out of the work release program. I'm bummed out, mad as hell. So now I have 4 months left. I have to serve in there. So I get in my routine. I start running dice and poker games. You can make dice out of paper, toilet paper. And you take the toilet paper and you get it wet, and you just keep forming it and letting it dry until you have dice. Not perfect, but you use a pen to put the numbers on there. And I ran dice and poker games. Tony Giacalone taught me a game, 3 dice. Some people call it CeeLo. It was a Greek game. That's all he told me. It's a Greek game. I can't even remember the name he told me. But it was the best game. It was like, if you're the house, you always win. But it doesn't appear to be that way. Like, out of 5 rolls, you'll win 3 times. But if somebody hits 4, 5, 6, that's another name for it, 4, 5, 6, then they have to be the bank. In which case, they have to match all bets at the table. And the way to get the bank back is just bet big. And we were betting with envelopes and soups and pies and whatever was on commissary. So I tell the guy, they win the bank, right? All right, boom, I don't have the bank number. I'm like, all right, I'm going to bet $5, which is a lot. And then they're like, man, I can't cover $5. I'm like, well, pass the bank. And everybody at the table's like, I don't have $5 either. And I'm like, I'll take the bank. I get the bank back and I keep winning. So it was a scam. I was running that. Now, at one point, I got into it with somebody about something. Some older black dude that my boy Joe Winkler, who might watch this, shout out to Joe Winkler. Joe ended up beating the guy up in my cell. Joe started to lose a little bit, so I jumped in. And the black dude was scared of me because I kind of pumped him. He had been to prison. He was an older guy, probably 30 years old. But Joe Winkler and some of the other guys who had been in there with me kind of were talking about what a tough guy was. And this black dude was not he pretended he was tough, but he really wasn't. And he could tell I was legit, a tough guy. So when him and Joe started fighting in my cell and Joe started losing, I jumped in and grabbed the black dude. And I didn't punch him or nothing. I just manhandled him and slammed him against the wall and said, all right, man, enough. And he was like, all right, you don't want no freaking smoke. So I think it was that dude got into it with me. There was some kind of confrontation of some kind, not a major confrontation, but I was like, I need to take a break from this table before I end up smashing something. And so I just passed the bank to Joe or somebody, and I said, I'm down for a minute watching the game. Sitting there watching the game, and I look on the floor. This is where God intervened in my life and made a huge difference in my life. Changed my life. This moment in time changed the course of my life, the history of my life, everything. I'm looking down. I happen to glance at the floor under the table next to the dice table, and there's a little booklet, pamphlet, It's a daily devotional called The Daily Bread. Never heard of it, don't know what it is, whatever. Something compelled me to pick it up. And I picked it up, and it was like daily, so I picked that date. I think it might have been open to that date. Somebody dropped it. And I read it, and it's talking to me. Like, I feel like it's talking to me. I mean, it literally was talking to me, man. Like, exactly, if somebody irritates you and you do this, and this, just remember God, turn the other cheek, da-da-da-da. And so, I'm like, damn, man, this thing's talking to me. So over the next couple weeks, I read this thing every night before bed, right? Around this time, a dove starts landing in my window. I'm 11 stories up, right? And this dove lands in a little 4-inch wide window, like a slot, and it's looking at me in my cell, 11 floors up. It keeps landing there, looking at me. I'm not putting together the whole dove as God and all that stuff. I'm just saying, cool, as a dove, give me something to do. I bring my boys in and look at this dove, man, and the window's looking in my cell. It checks me out. It keeps flying there. A couple of weeks, it was there, and I think somebody at some point said, the dove is up. Like, the meaning is an angel or God or whatever. I'm like, what, really? And I'm reading this Daily Bread every day, and every day it's like talking to my soul, man. It was so poignant and real and talking to. So I came to the conclusion, basically, after reading this for a few weeks, that God is real. There's no way that this little book can be so spot on with everything that I was going through on every day. It was perfectly tailored to my condition or surroundings or circumstances. This blew my mind. So I'm like, God's real. Like, this whole, I was raised Catholic and catechism and all that. I didn't pay attention. But I'm thinking now, God's the real deal, man. Jesus is real. So I read it every day. And then my girl gets a lawyer to get me a time cut. See if I can get out 34 days early. These don't happen very often, but it's worth a shot. The lawyer was like $500. Same lawyer. He files a motion. And I know I got this hearing coming up. So I'm reading, I'm starting to pray. And the book is about 3/4 the way done. It's just a pamphlet. And it's like, it's like 3 months at a time. So every 3 months you get a new one. And every day it's talking to me. And then one day I'm like, well, tomorrow I'm going to court for this hearing. And I might not be here because I read it every night before sleep. I had a single man cell. I was blessed in that. Not many people had single man cells. I just got lucky. So I said, you know what? I want to see what tomorrow said, because I might not be here to read it. You know what I'm saying? I might be home. So I flipped the page. It chokes me up. I flipped the page, and the page was blank. I flipped the next page, blank, blank, blank. It had like 16 pages left. They're all blank. And I'm like, that can't be irony, man. Like, I'm not going to be here the next 16 days or whatever. So the next day I went to court, and I walked in. The judge says, "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Limboom?" I had the speech all rehearsed. I said, "Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to," and he boom, time cut granted, you're out. My sister had wrote a letter to the judge. He read it. It was moving. My grandma and Grandpa Toko were in the court. And I walked out of there. All I remember is walking into the unit, and everybody knew I was going to court for a time cut. So they're all looking at me. I was dead serious. And then I go, "Hip hop hooray! Oh!" And they all start clapping like, "Yeah, he's getting out." And that was it. That was the first seed planted in my mind of faith, God, Jesus, my journey. And over the years, I'll tell you more. On my ride back, I'll tell you the rest. I'm here now. But it's a powerful story, man. It's crazy. God is real, and I knew it. So God bless you. We'll be back when I get done with church.